The fact that we have so many people here tonight in weather like this was amazing, and I'm really happy to see you here. Tonight we have a very special exhibit. For those of you who are here the first time, if this is your first time they're at Queensborough Community College with our Kupferberg Holocaust Center, I'd like to welcome you here and let you know some events that are coming which really turn out to be very exciting. We have on March 9th, Charles Fishman, the leading American poet on the Holocaust, will be doing a reading here on campus. That's a Sunday. Following that, we have what's become one of the most popular events at the Holocaust Center. We were able, 3 years ago, we came across a Passover Haggadah that was written for the first Seder held in the DP camps after World War II. It was written by a Jewish army chaplain, and it somehow went into disuse. I found it. I spoke to the publisher, and I said, do we have permission to reprint it? And he said, by all means. It was for a modest fee. And what we did was to have on campus what we call the Holocaust Freedom Seder. It was a Seder with a very unusual Haggadah that started off, we were slaves to Hitler in Germany. The first time we had this Seder, 125 people came. We had a cantor, Cantor Saul Zim, we had a Rabbi Fabian Schoenfeld, and we had a full meal catered by Meal Mart. The second time we did it, we said there'll be a catch to it. It was a $5 a head admission, but the catch was if you come with your children or grandchildren, you get in for free, and we had 183 people show up. We are now up to 147 people, and we only announced this 2 weeks ago. The very, very amusing part of it is someone called and said, can I reserve a full table? We enjoy this than our family Seder, and I'm bringing the whole family to this Seder. And we said, by all means, come and do it. And we said, but they said, and we're bringing children. I said, doesn't matter, you come in. But those of you who would like to get more information about it, or those who would like to reserve a space, because we're going to cut it off at 200, please see Jamie Brody or Patricia Thompson at the back when you leave or if you're near there now. I would very much like at this point to just let you know that the programs that we have at the Holocaust Center, we try to make these programs worthwhile, having a meaning for the entire community we service. And at Queensborough Community College, when I came here 4 years ago, the number I was told of different ethnic groups on campus was 137. 137 different, speaking 51 different languages. I'm sure in the past few years those numbers have changed and probably increased. But at the Holocaust Center, we take the Holocaust and make it something that is relevant to every group, every single group that we service, because we service the entire community of Queens. And the catalogs that you received tonight when you walked in, we take these and send them all over the United States at no charge to any school that wants them. Last year, we distributed over 30,000 such catalogs, and I was delighted, even ecstatic tonight when someone who came in and said, the catalog that we have here now for tonight's exhibit, Defying the Devil, is already on its way to Germany to a clergyman who would be interested in seeing that. This doesn't happen by itself. It happens with a lot of planning, a lot of money, and a lot of support from our administration. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you tonight the head of the administration, who is really responsible for the success we have with the Holocaust program, the president of Queensborough Community College, Dr. Eduardo J. Marti.
Thank you, Arthur. And we need to have a special certificate for those of you who came tonight with this weather. It's really a labor of love on your part, but I think it's going to be very, very worthwhile. This particular exhibit demonstrates the essence, if you will, of what we're trying to do with the Holocaust Resource Center. And the man that is sitting behind me, in only 4 years, has turned this center from a little quiet place for study and reflection and research to a place that disseminates the information not only about the Holocaust, but about prejudice in general throughout the land and beyond. He is a tremendous individual, and I always thank him, but I want you to help me give him the recognition that he deserves. Arthur. Tonight we are missing a very, very dear friend, and I'm going to take the liberty of the chair to ask all of you to have a moment of silence in memory of Harriet Kupferberg, who passed away about 3 weeks ago very suddenly. So if you allow me. Thank you. It's sad that Harriet is not going to see the Holocaust Resource Center built. She was the heart and soul of the construction project. For those of you who were inconvenienced because of the fence around the front of the campus, that's where the Holocaust Resource Center is going to be. And pretty soon, next year at this time, we'll be having an exhibit there, and it will be a wonderful, wonderful facility, and every single day we'll remember Harriet. But today we're celebrating the work of individuals who took it upon themselves to help the fellow human being, regardless of their risk, regardless of the color of their skin, regardless of their religion. They were willing to take a risk against terrible odds to save the Jews during the Holocaust. That, to me, represents, again, the essence of what we're trying to do at this college. For those of you who have heard this before, I am sorry. You're going to have to hear it again. But for those of you who are new to our campus, you should know that the Holocaust Resource Center is a place that is a laboratory for our students. It's a place for our students to understand the consequences of unbridled prejudice. It is a place for our students to understand how important it is to stand up and rise against the awful consequences of any action against a human being. And worst, it is so very important that we rise against the governments that may want to institutionalize the actions that are based on prejudice. The righteous individuals we are honoring tonight, and thanks to Rabbi Eisenberg again, the wonderful exhibit that he has prepared demonstrates how members of the clergy, without regard to any desire to convert anyone, but just because they wanted to help their human beings, not only took their lives in their hands, but some of them lost their lives because of their actions. And I think that it is only befitting that we honor them in this particular exhibit, and most importantly, that we spread the word throughout the land about these individuals who gave so much of themselves. I welcome you here to the campus. I thank Arthur and his workers, if you will, his volunteers, for the work. Hannah Lieberman is going to talk to you in a little while, but she was telling me that the 3,000 things that were sent, catalogs that were sent, she packed. So here's somebody, huh? Oh, somebody else helped? Oh, I thought you did it all yourself. Oh. Well, we have volunteers at the center who work very, very hard to ensure that what we do continues to be done. So I thank you all for the work that you do, and I thank you all for your presence tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Marti. Tonight's exhibit, one of the things that I'm required to do, in fact, if I took you back to my office right now, and I'd like to, because I cleaned my desk before I left, if I took you back to my office and there's a filing cabinet and I pulled out my job description, item number 3 said the executive director of the Holocaust Center is required to worry about programs and exhibits for the Kupferberg Holocaust Center, and there's an asterisk next to it. The bottom of the page said, and should he not worry about these, he will seek employment elsewhere. One of the things we did, we really worried about this exhibit. And the reason we worried about it is when you put together an exhibit on the Holocaust, there's so much competition, not from other people putting out exhibits, but from the ideas and the themes that are available. For example, we had a speaker, Robert Morris Shapiro, professor of Jewish studies at Brooklyn College, speaking during the fall semester on a book he has written, which is the definitive work on the Lodz Ghetto. And we said that would have been a possibility. And you are all very familiar with the stream of Holocaust denial that is taking place, and we could have put together an exhibit on Holocaust denial. But we decided, at Rabbi Eisenberg's prodding, to say, let's try this one, having to do with Christian clergy men and women who helped Jews escape during the Holocaust. And we took a chance, and I wasn't really convinced that we made the right choice until last November. Our exhibits are usually planned a year in advance because we need that time to do the research, the production, and all the work that goes with putting an exhibit together. And I was convinced, it was the middle of November, and 2 men were visiting the Holocaust Center, and they were looking at our current exhibit, and one of them said, "What is your next exhibit?" And I said, our next exhibit is called Defying the Devil. It has to do with Christian clergy that helped Jews escape during the Holocaust. And his response was, well, it's going to be a short exhibit. I knew then what we were doing. We were absolutely right on target, because if we had the time and if we had the budget, the catalog that you received tonight when you walked in would be 700 pages long. It would account for that many people who stood up and were able to say, I want to make a difference. Most of the time when I get up in front of a group and speak, I seldom use notes. Usually I'm very lucky. I know what I want to say, and most of the time it comes out right. But I have something I'd like to read to you today. This exhibit has hit me in a very unusual way. I'm very proud of the exhibits we do here, but this particular one went beyond anything we thought would be produced, and the impact has been amazing. This group of people that we're honoring tonight and that we're looking at tonight were so unique in that the orders they received to do what they did not come from any hierarchy of an organization. Their orders came simply from their conscience, how their conscience directed them, and their belief in God. One such person, Metropolitan Damaskonos, 1943 in Greece, said the following: "For God created us in his own image, and we are obligated to extend our help to our fellow men and will not allow Satan to rule over us. I have made my cross, have spoken with God, and have decided to save as many Jewish souls as I can. Just think of what person can say something like that, and not only say it, but actually follow through. Or the second one, from the Russian Orthodox Church, Mother Maria said the following: "At the last judgment, I will not be asked whether I satisfactorily practice asceticism or how many genuflections I have made before the divine altar. I will be asked whether I fed the hungry, clothed the naked, visited the sick, and the prisoner in his jail. That is all that will be asked." Take these two people that nobody knows unless they study this, and look at the impact they had simply because their conscience told them that their beliefs would not allow them to sit idly by. It's a very, very powerful exhibit we have today, and I'd like to call to the podium Rabbi Isidore Eisenberg, the curator and developer of this exhibit.
Just about a year ago, you may remember that we opened an exhibit here at the Queensborough Community College Holocaust Research Center devoted to diplomatic representatives, both European, Latin American, coming from European, Latin American countries, from France, from Japan, from China. These diplomats, you may remember those who were here, were honored for ignoring the instructions of their own governments by extending visas and false travel documents to Jews fleeing Nazi persecution. These diplomats were posted throughout Europe. They constituted, we always should remember that, a minority among their peers, but their deeds became legendary. The Jews they saved from becoming ash remained forever indebted to these diplomats for their courageous deeds. Many of them ended their own lives scorned by their own governments, some even in abject poverty. Only posthumously were their deeds acknowledged. But most of these diplomats were protected by diplomatic immunity. I say most, because the life of the most outstanding of them all, perhaps, certainly the best known of them all, Raoul Wallenberg, is still to this day, his whereabouts are still not exactly known, although they are speculation, but we still don't know what happened to him. He died, he disappeared. So while diplomats found protection from Nazi harassment because of their foreign cover, that was not to be true for the clergy serving their communities throughout Nazi-occupied Europe. One could be led to think that Christian clergy, men and women, would have been able, because of their position in their communities, to ward off the Gestapo raids and persecution. But that was not to be true. Protecting, hiding, or otherwise helping Jews was considered a crime, most of the time punishable by death. And the Christian clergy were not, I repeat, were not exempt from this law. The Russian Christian Orthodox nun, Elisabetta Skoptsova, known as Mother Maria, that Dr. Fluke just quoted a few moments ago, and the parish priest, Dmitry Klepinin, were both murdered in the Ravensbrück concentration camp in Germany. Pastor André Trocmé, about whom we will hear in a little while much more, or Le Chambon-sur-Lignon, whose daughter is honoring us this evening by being with us here, was arrested and detained in a Nazi internment camp, while the pastor's nephew, Daniel Trocmé, who so unselfishly helped his uncle in saving Jewish children, was murdered in the Majdanek gas chamber. The few men and women that we have selected for our exhibit opening this evening are part of about somewhere between 600 and 700 men and women, clergy, honored so far by Yad Vashem as righteous Gentiles among the nations. In the process of reading and researching for the exhibit, I couldn't but be touched by their devotion and heroism. Although none of these men and women considered themselves heroes, they thought of themselves as doing what was right. They thought of themselves as fulfilling God's will. That is, that all people are equal before his presence. If anything, I found that it was a remorse that often haunted these wartime rescuers, growing out of their nagging doubts about whether the choices they were forced to make during that desperate period were the right ones. Most of us who have never had to take on such a responsibility in a time of national trauma assume that rescuers perhaps must feel good for performing acts of goodness that look heroic to the rest of the world. But the responsibility took on of choosing many times, because they were forced to do so, whom they could save, and therefore necessarily sacrificing others many times, was a heavy and permanent burden for the human mind and heart, at least for the type of human being who became the rescuers I was privileged to honor tonight through this exhibit. Each one of them, those we included, and the hundreds we could not because of lack of space, budget, and whatnot, put their lives on the line. And the question that kept nagging me day in and day out as I was working on the exhibit was, Isidoro, what would you have done had you been there at the time? What would you have done had you been a Christian clergy person? What would you have done? It's not an easy answer. The Jewish religious tradition does not, perhaps it may not be as popularly known, but the Jewish religious tradition does not include the practice of sainthood. But it knows about the existence of 36 righteous people, Hasidei Umot HaOlam. They are called the Lamed Vavniks. Lamed is 30 in Hebrew, the letter Lamed. Vav is the letter 6, 36. The 36 righteous people, unknown to everyone, including to themselves, who because of their righteous deeds, the tradition says, sustain the world to this day. The Christian men and women we honor tonight, in my book, certainly belong to the pantheon of the 36. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rabbi. Luck had a lot to do with our program for tonight. Once we had the idea underway and the research was taking place and we began meeting with the people who do the layout, I began wondering, who can we get to speak that would give this presentation a very, very special meaning? I mean, you can always have me, and Rabbi Eisenberg is here, and Dr. Marti is here, but we want to get that special person. And while I was thinking out loud one day, Hanny Liebman heard me. Hanny Liebman, as you know, is one of our volunteers, and there are the other volunteers who are stand up. Ellen Alexander, I see too. These two women are outstanding. on Thursdays, they let me work at the Holocaust Center. They run the place, they really do, when it comes in on a Thursday. But I was thinking out loud, and Hanny said to me, you know, and Hanny's background is at age 16, she became involved with World War II and became a victim and is now looked upon as a survivor. But she said, you know this story, you know my story. I was sent to a Gurs concentration camp, and I got out, and I landed up in France at this village, Chambon, and Reverend Trocme was a savior to me. And I said, yes, you know, I've heard this story before. And she said, well, you know, his daughter Nellie lives in Minnesota. So I said, well, let's get her here. And, you know, Hanny said, well, you know, it costs money. And I said, don't worry, I'll take care of the money. And we made the contact. And if I would say to you, Reverend Andre Trocme, a lot of you would say, you'd never heard the name before. But in our exhibit of righteous clergymen, he towers, he emerges as a towering figure of modesty, but of conviction, with a strong Huguenot background. Those of you who may be familiar with the history of France know that being a Huguenot was not an easy thing in France. It was something that you suffered for greatly. That history and that family tradition was carried on, that understanding. And so tonight, we're very proud to call to, I was almost like call to the bema, but to call to the podium Nellie Trocme Hewitt, daughter of Reverend Trocme. The one in the red jacket is Nellie Trocme. What's happened? Let me explain what's happening here now. This is like a class reunion from the village of Chambon. People who were able to escape. Rudy Appel, Hanny, come on up. It's a good picture. Okay. Why don't you take a look over here? Okay. Nellie, go ahead.
I wanted Hannah and Rudy Appel to be here with me. Come on closer, don't be scared. Because they are real witnesses of people who were actually protected by the people in my village. You know, usually they say, oh, all these people protected and so on. Well, here are two samples, and I thought we should have the samples visible to you. Now, the samples can sit down.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming up. Now, if you open your beautiful catalog on page 11, you will see three guys holding hands. It's okay. They are holding hands. And they are holding hands because they were just freed from a short stay in a French holding camp by the French police, not the Gestapo, the French police. And they were arrested because of their activities during the Second World War, protecting refugees. The one on the left is my dad. Okay? My dear dad, he was a fun guy, but he was also an exceptional guy. And he is the one who said, when the Vichy police asked him, we want you to give us the name of the people you know in the area who are Jewish. And he said, it's a similar quote, he said, we don't know what a Jew is. We only know men, meaning human beings. So this quote is really his. And he was warned that if he said that, I mean, if he didn't want to comply, they would probably arrest him and his friends. And they were arrested. And they were arrested only for 1 month, after which they were liberated, and the camp was closed, and everybody in it was deported to Germany. And extermination camps. So here I am, a sample of a French Huguenot, a French Protestants. We are rare because we are very few. In France even, when I went 1 year to law school, killing time to get my American visa long ago, I sat next to a student and I said, well, I'm a Protestant. And he looked at me and said, do they still exist? Well, we are few, but we are a very honest and a very serious and very dedicated group. And the Protestants, because they were so persecuted during the 17th and 18th century by the French kings and the system, felt very close to the Jews, because those were people who, like themselves long ago, were in trouble because they were who they were. The Protestants were sent to the gallows, they were hung, they were escaped as well as they could. The Jews did the same thing. They escaped as well as they could. And the ones who could not escape just hid where they could. And our area, because it is so mountainous in central France, because it is so protected by nature, because it is beautiful, but the weather is bad, there is no big railroad, there is no industry, there is no nothing to attract anyone but a refugee, really, or a poor farmer. The area is still occupied, was still occupied at the time by descendants of those French Protestants who had been persecuted. And those descendants very honestly thought that, yes, of course they would give protection to another group of people who were in trouble for who they were, for their beliefs. Now, something that might amuse you, during the French Revolution, when the revolutionary committees were hanging all the nobles and the Catholics, the people of the area, those Protestants who had been persecuted by Catholics, actually hid Catholic priests who were in trouble. So the tradition of hiding the one in trouble was really endemic to the area. I don't want to take too much time, but I would like to tell you that it's a privilege to be here and to have friends. Hannah is my hostess. Rudy is a friend too. And then I have another friend here, Louise, who never was in Chambon, but she has a little story to tell. And she came with me from Minnesota because I told her, you must come and tell your story. And I would like to tell you that on the front table there are two books that are directly related to Le Chambon. One is called Hidden on the Mountain. It's a book written for adolescents, for young people, by two authors, one of whom is here, Karen Ruel. Please get up, Karen. There she is. It is a very good book. As a matter of fact, both Hannah and Rudy are featured in it. Karin and her friend went into deep research for a long time, interviewed all sorts of people who had been hidden in Chambon. And those people gave their memories of what happened to them, how they got there, and what happened to them there. And it's a very, very true and honest report on what happened there. If you have children or grandchildren who are adolescent, it makes a wonderful gift, and it's not too expensive. Now, I hate to tell you, but the other one is extremely expensive. It is also there, and it is called We Only Know Men, quote from my dad. That one was written by a fellow who is a professor at Whitman College in Walla Walla with the onions in Washington State. And Patrick Henry became very interested in the story. And today, the people in Le Chambon, the archivists and historians, think that it is the best book that was written on the area. It supersedes everything else. It is not for young people, it's for adults. Sometimes it's a little difficult, but not that difficult. It's a very good book if you like to read. Unfortunately, it was published by Catholic University Press, and it is very expensive. So don't buy it. Convince your library to buy it, and then you read it. Okay. But it is right there. I brought a sample of it, and there are some flyers. That's the second book. And also, oh, by the way, when I told Patrick Henry I was coming here to talk, he said, wow, I graduated from St. John, right here around the corner. And so I said, you did? And he said, well, tell the people that while I was at St. John, I drove a good humor ice cream truck. And they will laugh. And you see, you did laugh. That's how he made some spending money. He's a very dear friend of mine now. Finally, just in passing, Karine Ruel and her friend, who wrote Hidden on the Mountains, are presently working on a book for children that will be a book of pictures. This book is to try to break the racism among kids who are in elementary school. And the story they have discovered and are using is the story of rescues, not by Christians, but by Muslims. The Grand Mosque of Paris saved over 100 children, I understand. She put up some flyers here, but it's very general because she doesn't want to give up her secrets before the book comes out. But actually, there are some flyers there, so watch for that book. That would be for elementary school children. And I did bring a book by Robert Satloff, which studies the rescue of Jews by Muslims in Paris and in North Africa, in Morocco and in Algeria. So if you're interested, that book must be on Amazon.com now because it's not brand new anymore, and it is good, good reading. Meanwhile, it's a treat for me to always speak to people and tell them that the story they hear about Chambon is very real and that it happened without any pretension because none of those rescuers were thinking of themselves as heroes. They just did it because it had to be done. You know, you see a child in the middle of the street who is going to be run over by a car, hey, you grab him. Same thing, someone came on your front steps, welcome in, we'll see what we can do. Those people, humble people, very close to their values, very close to their religion, very close to their consciences. They were spread over this plateau in about 12 villages, each one with its own minister. It was a Huguenot enclave, and those ministers all did something, each one using his own gifts. It's not everybody who was an André Trocmé who could shake the church with a sermon that would make them think a lot. But they all became very involved and very deeply involved. And it is the combination of all these people, all these farmers, all these ministers, and the population that was there, and also other Jews that were there, that helped, that allowed this area to save about 3,500 Jews, they think. There were no files, so you cannot have names, you know. But about the estimate is 3,500 Jews. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Nellie. Thank you very much. I'd also like to call now Louise Gratstein-Dillery, also from Chambon, to tell of her experiences. Please come up.
Oh my goodness, I'm so impressed to so many people. But first of all, forgive me for being a name dropper, but Nellie is one of my very best friends. And I like to brag about that. You'll forgive me for it, won't you? Anyway, I am not a Holocaust survivor because I was never deported. I guess I'm a occupation survivor. I'll tell you my story briefly, and why I'm here is because I was helped by a priest. Anyway, I was born in Paris of parents who were from Poland and met in Paris, and I was born in Paris, and my mother, I was an only child. My mother died just before the war was declared in 1939. She died in June, And then, as you know, there was this, then the war was declared, and there was that period that we call the phony war in English, la drôle de guerre in French, and you know all about that, don't you? I'm sure I don't have to teach you anything about the history of that time. So for a while it was okay, and then it started. And of course, when it started, we Jews knew that we were in trouble. Even though I was only 14 at the time, I knew, I could sense. And I hate to say that, but you know, in all categories of people, French, Germans, you have the heroes and you have the dirty rats, right? And as you know, we had food restrictions, so we had coupon books that we used once a month. We'd go to our local mairie, town hall, to, I'm too close, to get our coupons for the month. And my father was a factory worker. In those days, there was no social security or anything, so if you didn't work, you did not get paid, and if you were sick too often, you were fired. So my father was not a big man, but he was very wiry and strong and never missed a day of work. And that one day, the day when we were due to go to the town hall to get our coupon books for the month, wouldn't you know, my father was sick in bed with his stomach ulcers. I had never seen my father sick, and I was extremely scared because I thought he was going to die. I mean, I'd never seen him sick. I'd never seen him in bed, period. And that one day, he couldn't get out of bed, so I had to take his book and mine and go to the town hall and get our coupons. And I was so preoccupied and worried that I didn't notice, but apparently there were two men who saw me holding two books, so I thought, haha, and they followed me. And by the time I realized it was too late, they came right up behind me, and they forced my father out of bed, took him away. I was right there, and they didn't even look at me. So right there, you have a mystery. How do you explain that, you know? I could have been taken and been another little Anne Frank, I suppose. But there, I was so traumatized that I went through a period of amnesia where I don't remember anything at all, because I never saw my father again, of course. And it's at that time that somebody said to me, and I have no idea who, I asked my friends, I don't know. Some stranger said to me, go see Father so-and-so. I said so-and-so because the name didn't mean anything. And I went to see that priest, and he said, he gave me money. He said, you can, as long as you're still home, you have your little apartment where you lived with your father, pay the rent. Anyway, I was able to pay the rent. And I went to see him a certain day, I don't know, maybe it was a Tuesday, I don't remember. A certain day of the month, at a certain time of the day, he gave me the money, and I was able to live there and, with the help of my friends, and I had no relatives, so in my school, the principal helped, gave me a scholarship so I could pay for books, and because in our schools in France, in our lycées, it's free, but you have to pay for your books and school supplies. So, and then you can eat lunch at school every day. This principal of ours was an extraordinary woman. She had an only child, a daughter, who was in the resistance, you know, in the underground, was arrested and never came back from the concentration camp. So what I'm trying to say is you have those heroes, you know, that priest. All I remember about him was he was really huge. Maybe he had one of those diseases, you know, that make you feel huge beard. In fact, Nellie found an article about him in a book she has about the righteous. And then I remembered, totally by accident, but that's too long a story, I won't bore you with the details. But by accident, it so happened that I found out the name of that priest, and his name was Father Devaux, D-E-V-A-U-X. May he be forever blessed. And so, of course, I told Nellie, guess what? I found out the name. And it's at that time that she was invited to come here. And so it was fresh in her mind. And she said, the gentleman in charge, she said, you know, I have a friend who was saved by a priest. And, oh, bring her. And so here I am. And, you know, I have no spirit of revenge. I believe in the philosophy of our wonderful Elie Wiesel. Memory, but not revenge. But I must admit, you'll forgive me for confessing to you that when I found out that those two Frenchmen, it was found out after the liberation, that they had arrested a whole bunch of Jews without orders, because if they did it on their own, they got a bonus. And when I was called by the police to try to identify them in mug books, of course, I was so traumatized. All I remember is hats, overcoats, and an empty oval, you know, for the face. And then I found out not only they finally caught them, there was a trial, and they were executed. I'm sorry, but I'm glad. I'm sorry if I'm not, you know, forgiving. I'm just glad they were punished. I would have never been able to shoot them myself if I'd been given a gun, I'll tell you. But do you understand that? I mean, isn't it strange how we can be so ambivalent about things like that? But anyway, I am convinced that there's good, bad, in everywhere, in all people. And as I really, really believe in my deepest heart and soul that somehow the forces of good will always prevail against the forces of evil. I'm sure of it. Right? We have the proofs right here in all our stories. And there are more and more books coming out about the righteous and all. It just thrills my heart. I just can't tell you. It makes me feel so good. So we can afford to hope, huh? I think. Thank you.
So what do we do next? Some of you have seen the exhibit, all of you have heard some of the stories, but the next thing is something that I really look forward to, and that is the fact that we just can't go home and say, you know, there was a great exhibit there, and maybe I'll tell my friends, and maybe when the exhibit is closed, you can come to my organization and do it. We wanted to do something more significant. And what we wanted to do was to offer up some sign of recognition, some sign of thanks to those people who are no longer here, but who are represented by the various branches of the clergy that are in existence today, and that remember them for what they did. It has come part of their theology and their tradition. And so what I would like to do is call up at this time Monsignor Guy Massey. Monsignor? Here he is, okay. Monsignor Guy Massey is the head of the Christian-Jewish dialogue in the diocese. And anybody who came from Brooklyn tonight is, you know, up for sainthood. Rabbi mentioned the saint. What we want to do is show some type of appreciation. Our budget doesn't allow us to pay you. But what we can do is give you some sign of appreciation. And I just want to read part of this and hope that what we say here tonight will have some meaning of appreciation and can serve the rest of us here in understanding that this is not a very short exhibit. We say, and I'll just read two of the whereases here. It says, whereas at a time in the history of the world coinciding with the outbreak of World War II, when hope was a fading memory, human decency a vanishing trait, and recourse to justice an option no longer available, there existed a group of clerics who, without direction from a higher authority, other than their conscience and the Word of God, were put to the test of standing up for their beliefs, fully aware that such actions would jeopardize their lives. And whereas Monsignor Angelo Giuseppe Roncalli, who later became Pope John the 23rd, Father Pierre Marie Benoit, and Mother Superior Tekla Bundaskawa, imbued with the sense of the dignity of all people and the sanctity of protecting the innocent from all travails, mobilized their individual talents to produce a series of networks that struggled mightily and successfully in guaranteeing the escape of countless Jews from the deadly throes of their Nazi tormentors. Monsignor, we thank you so much for what took place and for what you've done. Dr. Moti, would you like to? You can. Good. Let's take a shot first. Let's take a shot. Dr. Moti. Okay, no, you get in the middle, so you're good. You're good. Okay, here we go. Okay. You got it. Okay, Monsignor. Oh, you're
Thank you very much. I'm very happy to be here. And I just wanted to say, when I read the booklet and saw that clergy, without a higher authority, did this, it elevates me because it kind of confirms that there are good people from every walk of life. For whatever reason that people do good things, thank God, Baruch Hashem. Whether they did this for the glory of God, whether they did this because it was the thing to do for humanity, people lived. Now, taking that, if this was 60 years ago, I don't think I would be standing here. And in the Diocese of Brooklyn, I went, and I'm a graduate of the Jewish Theological Seminary of America. I have a degree in Judaic studies. For this reason, I think it is time, and I think when you see these survivors and you see people who are helped by clergy, the ongoing dialogue between Christianity and Judaism, and I would have to say, maybe not Christianity because I can only speak for one branch of it, and that is Catholicism, is finally coming to learn that Judaism exists on its own. It is not a backdrop for Christianity. It is not a backdrop for Christianity. And the dialogue based on, these people, we stand on their shoulders, really. They didn't know that this would happen, but basically they filter into this. Says a great deal to me that once there is a mutual respect, there is mutual learning. And so it was wonderful for me, it was a gift to me, for those 5 years. All right, so it took a long time to learn the Hebrew, but for these 5 years, 3 trips to Israel. All right, so I milked the first year and saw the whole country when I should have been in school. All right, look. Nonetheless, I think it is very important that these two religious branches speak with each other. As far as the Jewish people are concerned, there's a statement that all Jewish people stood at the foot of Mount Sinai when Moshe received the commandments. All of them, those then and those in the generations to come. Sadly to speak, I think every Jewish person stood at the gates of Auschwitz and Majdanek and all of these places which exterminated Jews. You all stood there, whether you were there or whether you were in this country or whether you weren't even born. You know why? Because it was a threat to all of you, born, not born, generations to come. What is it telling us today? I get very nervous when I see religious rhetoric from politicians. I get very nervous when I hear such anti-Zionism and that rhetoric that goes on in the newspapers. Remember, you can't be anti-Semitic. It's just not politically correct. But you can be anti-Zionist. And therefore, I do think when the Jewish people say about Israel as being the antidote to so many of these things that have gone on, well, it's true. And I think it's important that that nation exist. The Jewish people are here because God wants you here. And there is something wonderful about that. And would the world be a better place if the Torah wasn't read? If people weren't following it? If people have been following it in all different ways? I don't think so. I don't think so. And so I think we need each other to balance so far, the religious ecosystem of who we are. So I thank you for this award, and I encourage these studies, and I do think that I will talk to the Catholic school system, in Brooklyn at least. All right, Queens too. This is in Brooklyn? And have those booklets sent to our Catholic schools. I think it's very important that that happens, you know. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Monsignor. Next, I want to call on someone who I haven't seen in a long time, probably too long a time. I know him from a career and a half ago, before coming to Queensborough Community College, but one of the very outstanding and powerful and effective individuals in the clergy, and that's Father Paul. I like to read something that we put into the citation. I'm not going to go through the whole thing because you don't hear it, but two very unusual Greek Orthodox clergymen are mentioned in this. One is noted especially for the fact that when they began the roundups and deportations, he publicly stated to his parishioners and his flock that you are to help the Jews escape. 275 Jews escaped, and at the end of the war, 275 Jews returned. It is the only indication, the only geographic location in Europe that was affected by the Holocaust that can make this claim. Secondly, when they came back, his second message to the people whom he represented as the clergyman was, all property that belonged to the Jews that may have been taken for safekeeping or otherwise is to be returned. And it took place. One of the few people that can make that statement. So I just want to read this one title before I call Father Paul up. It says, whereas Metropolitan Christosmos on the Greek island of Zakynthos, Zakynthos, okay. Metropolitan Joachim Alexolopoulos of Volos, imbued with a sense of the dignity of all people and the sanctity of protecting the innocent from all travails, mobilized their individual talents to produce a series of actions and networks that struggled mightily and successfully in guaranteeing the escape of countless Jews from the deadly throe of their Nazi tormentors. Father Paul.
The good rabbi put me into deep thought when he asked the question, what would we do? And I can't help but think of the words of St. Paul that says that we are to be not only hearers of the word, but doers of the word. And so I pray that we will have the strength that these men had to be able to stand up in faith and to reach out to anyone who is in need and oppressed. Our own Greek Orthodox people identify much with the Holocaust of the Jewish people because we also went through our own Holocaust in Asia Minor. My own parents are from that part of the world, and we are still fighting to survive in that part of the world. Our ecumenical patriarchate is being under attack. We fear that we will lose the presence of our patriarchate, which is comparable to the Vatican in the West, and that a history of 2,000 years from the time of St. Andrew will be lost. So we can surely identify with this oppression, and I believe this is one of the reasons why the Greek people were united with the suffering of the Jews during the Holocaust. Thank you very much, and we will surely appreciate this beautiful exhibit. Thank you.
Mike? A special citation. It says, whereas Pastor Andre Chakmi, keenly aware of the merciless treatment suffered by his Huguenot ancestors, steeled himself with the virtues of his beliefs and with a sense of the dignity of all people and the sanctity of protecting the innocent, formed a network guaranteeing the escape of thousands of Jewish children from the deadly throes of their Nazi tormentors by using his village as a way station to freedom. Nellie, could you please come back up here and accept this on our behalf? Just hold it and smile. Turn around. Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Very thoughtful of you.
Yes, okay.
I accept that for all the people of the month.
We thank you.
The month.
Okay.
Not me.
Thank you. There's one person here that I'd like to introduce. He's standing in the back, Michael Simanowicz. Michael Simanowicz wears many different hats. He's wearing a yarmulke right now. But one of the hats that has helped us greatly is that Michael has worked with us in putting together our hate crimes conference. Michael is the community liaison to the auxiliary police force in Queens, and he spends most of his nights not at home with his wife and children, what he should be doing, but out working with the community, and he's been invaluable in helping us with our hate crimes task force. I want to do something that doesn't have to do with the clergy, but I have a special citation that I'd like to put forward and present tonight. One of the great joys of working at the Holocaust Center is you're not only rooted on campus, you're rooted all over the community. And being that way, you meet an enormous amount of people. Most of them very effective, many of them very nice. And one of the great opportunities I had was meeting someone I had known before, but only meeting him in a different situation with different responsibilities. The person I'm speaking about is Joe Shiami. Joe Shiami has his official title is Vice President of St. John's University for Governmental and Community Affairs, a job nobody wants because you're never right. No matter what you do, you are never right. And I know many times I spent with Joe commiserating with him. But Joe also serves as the member of the advisory board of the Kupferberg Holocaust Center. And as such, Joe brings a lot of wisdom and a lot of insight. And because of Joe, 2 years ago, we at the Holocaust Center held the first Yom HaShoah service at St. John's University. When you do it the first time, it's considered a very good thing. When you do it the second time, you shake your head and say, yeah, it's the right thing to do. This year, it's a tradition. And because of Joe and because of insight, we have been able to have an enormous amount of interaction with both the faculty and the student body at St. John's University. And Joe, I know there are 100 other places you can be tonight, but I'm really glad you're here with us, and I'd like you to come up to do this, for this presentation. Michael, do you want to join us? By the way, we didn't tell Joe about this, and Michael, since you work so well with Joe together, let's see what we can do. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody said before, you look like you have a lot of color. I was away last week in Florida for a reunion for the Order of Sons of Italy in America. So I do have color, but I'm a little bit pale by this. I'm very surprised. I know many of you read about St. John's right now, and we have a bit of a community battle going on, a difference of opinion on a building that's going up in Jamaica, and it makes my life interesting. But I have been at St. John's as long as some of you may have been born. This past August, celebrated my 45th year at St. John's. I started when I was 3. But my real reason for getting up here is to say to you how proud I am, and I tell people about my activities with the Kupferberg Holocaust Center and Archives Research, especially in the position as secretary on the board. I grew up in a predominantly Jewish neighborhood. I was across the street from a Catholic church and school, so I've been Catholic school oriented, but from my earliest time, I sat shiva with Mr. and Mrs. Shkolnick, who were more like my grandparents. My grandparents lived 5 blocks away, but they were the people I knew. He was a victim, actually, of World War II, and he never recovered quite from the battle, from the return. And their family was more like one with me. And so throughout the years of my life, I've really considered myself akin to the Jewish community. When I was national president of the Order of Sons of Italy in America, it was my privilege to have several programs, solidarity breakfasts with the Jewish community. In fact, in New Hyde Park on April the 27th, the Sons of Italy Lodge that's there will have a solidarity breakfast with the Temple Emmanuel. So my entire life has been one of affinity, closeness, but sensitivity. And we cannot forget. We teach our children from when they're young that an injustice against one is an injustice against all of us. And that really is why I remain involved. And my hat is off, of course, to Dr. Marti. We're reading so much about Cuba these days, but we have here our own Cuban president. I'd like him to go back to become the president, but I don't want to lose him here, so he's not going to go. But what a wonderful president Queensborough Community College has. We're really so proud of you, so proud. To my partner in crime over here, Arthur, and Roseanne is out there, our chair for the Holocaust Center. He is incredible. I knew Arthur years ago serving at the university in government and community relations, but in this role, we could not have a more appropriate person. He knows everybody, and he gets things done, and that's what we need to do in terms of education. We've got to get the young people to understand what took place. We can't have people in this country or in Australia, where we remember the famous father of a famous actor who was denying the existence of the Holocaust. We cannot deny it. It took place. And the fact is that we heard tonight these stories that have to be recounted over and over again. So I thank you very much, and I accept this with great humility and pride. Thank you.
Joe, thank you for those kind words. I'll need you when they negotiate my salary. Okay. Thank you. The person you heard laughing is Dr. Marti. Okay. And finally, but certainly not least, we are blessed at the Holocaust Center with some unusual individuals who serve as volunteers. Most, not all, but most are Holocaust survivors. And Many times during the week, I get calls from people saying, you know, I don't have anything to do. I'd like to volunteer on Wednesdays from 9 to 2 or Thursdays from 4 to 7. But we have an especially unique group of volunteers. One of them I want to cite tonight because she was involved with what took place with this rescue priest. But to give you an idea of the type of person who went through the Holocaust and came out as a survivor and continued a life on, last semester, I got a call. It was Wednesday, and it was from Hanny Liebman. And she said, Arthur, don't worry. I just signed myself out of the hospital. I'll be in time tomorrow at 10 o'clock, because Hanny knows that her time for coming into work at the Holocaust Center is at 10 o'clock. I said, no, you don't have to. She says, Arthur, I signed myself out of the hospital, and I'll be there at 10 o'clock. And when she came in, I said, are you okay? Arthur, I'm here. Let me work. And so, Hanny, if you'd like to come up here. It said, this citation and recognition is greatly presented to Hanny Liebman, a survivor of the Holocaust whose understanding, compassion, and dedication has emerged as a source of inspiration to a generation that seeks to understand the legacy of the Holocaust. Hanny, we got it. And Dr. Marti. Let's go. This one I want. That's what I want in my office. Yeah, this one. And thank you. And finally, stay here. I'd like to ask all those, because we really need the picture. It's a really great picture. Will all of those who received citations please come up for a group picture? Father, Joe, Monsignor, Nellie, let's move over here so we're all. Hanny, you get in the middle. Go ahead. Are we okay now? Everybody smile. I want to take another one, just one more. Okay? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Okay. At this point, we thank you all for coming. We hope you've enjoyed this. If you haven't joined the Holocaust Center, do so. Coffee and cake on one side, the exhibit on the other. Thank you so much.